This is the BearCast, presented by Bird Culchin Ford. Bird Culchin Ford has been in Waco since 1936. Ford is the #1 selling truck in Texas 43 years running. The BearCast is also presented by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. Here's Craig Smoak and Grayson Grundhoefer.
And welcome in on this Tuesday, November the 14th, 2023. The BearCast on SicEm365.com, also on the Baylor Athletics on SicEm365 YouTube page. And if that's where you are watching us either live Tuesdays at 11:15 or after the fact, if you would, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well. That would go a long way, and we do appreciate that. But however you are listening to us, welcome into another edition. And yet another edition this football season where we're going to be talking about an unfortunate outcome, although a style unto its own, as Kansas State takes down the Baylor Bears this past Saturday by a score of 59-25 in Manhattan, Kansas. So that's what we'll be diving into. Just a couple of games to go in the football season now officially, as the bowl games, well, those are completely off the table. The opportunity to play in a bowl game, there will be no postseason, but there will be an offseason that starts very quickly and in some ways starts right now for this Baylor football team. So we'll dive into K-State. We'll also get into just a couple of different football notes and then some basketball news as well, as the hoop season is fully underway. And then the mailbag to close things on out. I'm Craig Smoak, SicEm365.com writer, also 365 Sports host, and joined as always by Grayson Grundhoefer, Director of Broadcasting for SicEm365. Got Garrett Ross behind the scenes as well, producing the show. And, well, Grayson, here we are again. And, you know, hopefully we have some more positive things to talk about here in the last couple of weeks, but that is not the case today. As I mentioned, 59-25, Kansas State victors, number 25 team, taking down a Baylor team that now finds itself at 3-7 overall. But how are we doing this week? First things first, I guess.
I mean, that was a really, really bad performance, and it's really one of those, I mean, it's another week where you're just sitting there and just kind of honestly like laughing about things that happened. In this game, it was just in particularly bad because of some of the things that we're going to talk about, from defensive touchdowns to special teams blunders to just kind of everything that has gone wrong for Baylor pretty much all year, just kind of snowballed and was kind of accumulated into one game. And so that was really, really tough to watch. And then you listen to Dave Aranda this week, and I mean, you know, I've been pretty steadfast, and basically everything I've been hearing, you know, was basically like, oh yeah, Aranda's going to come back, it seems like. But I will say this week has been pretty eerie, and something that I think has been a little bit different. It might be giving me kind of a little bit of a different perspective on kind of what I feel like his job security is like right now.
Yeah, it's that time of year for the coaching carousel. We've already seen Texas A&M make a big decision with Jimbo Fisher, and other jobs opening up as well around the country, not to mention high-profile coordinator jobs now opening up across the country as well at big schools. And so you do find yourself wondering, you know, how involved Baylor's going to be. I think there's no question that there will be some changes, but to what degree? Are we talking, you know, a coordinator? Are we talking position coaches? Are we talking the head coach? I mean, that is something that you at least have to broach because of where they're sitting right now. I've been with you as far as feeling pretty confident that he's going to be back. But just last Saturday, that was a different type of tough pill to swallow because it was such a lopsided loss, and it really just left you feeling like, man, they're just nowhere close to where they need to be right now. And how did they get there? And it's hard to see it the further and further you get down the line and the more the losses pile up. And, yeah, in his press conference, he was openly talking about, you know, how Christmas season basically starts seeing those car commercials with the big ribbons, and that's really a sign of like, hey, somebody's getting fired here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And that's a, you know, a horrible feeling. I would hate that every Christmas rolls around and I'm thinking about, you know, my buddies or myself getting fired, but that's the coaching profession for you. But then also just in the postgame on Saturday, seemed like he was really at a loss for what had just happened and almost stunned by it, which is stunning and, you know, hard to imagine that you're too stunned when you get beat by 44 points, or 34 points, excuse me. You would think that you kind of saw that coming a little bit more than you acted afterwards.
But it's been that way all year.
Yeah, I know,
They came into the year thinking like, no, like we're going to be good, right? And then it's like, You're nowhere near good. Like, how could you have thought that you were going to be good with the way the season's gone? And it's like, you could convince me that you thought your team was going to be good if you're losing a bunch of games that are close. But, I mean, they've gotten blown out multiple times, and multiple times at home as well. I mean, it's been a disaster of a season.
Yeah, and I was startled by how stunned he was by the fact they got blown out, because I thought the writing was on the wall, but then he just came across as a little bit more of a deer in the headlights afterwards, which was a little, like I said, startling. So there was that feeling after the game of just like they got hit by a bus that they weren't expecting, although everybody else was expecting it, and like kind of telling them like, hey, that bus is rounded the corner.
Coming, yeah.
You better watch out. So there was that was kind of odd. And then, yesterday during the Monday press conference, he was a little bit more, had some of that confidence back as far as the direction of the program and all of that, but it still just felt like, yeah, man, what's to come here? What is around the corner here? So, I mean, that's going to continue speculation about changes, including, him in the head coaching spot. Whether they're legitimate or not remains to be seen, but there is going to be that speculation just because of where they find themselves. So where is that? That's at 3-7 now with 2 games to play. That's with a bowl game completely off the table, so they know these next 2 games are it as far as 2023. And up next will be hated rival TCU in Fort Worth on Saturday. We'll dip into that game, and then West Virginia at the end of the year. But here's where we find ourselves after Saturday. Let's take a look back at that game, and then we can kind of reset as far as what's ahead. So Kansas State in Manhattan, number 25 team in the country, rolling into this one. And for Baylor, still those slight hopes that you were going to be able to maybe win out and maybe, find yourselves in a bowl game. But it was pretty quickly early on here, Grayson, that was not going to be the case. So let's start with a 12-play, 81-yard drive that opened the game as the home team made it 7-0 right out of the chute. And it was, one of those of like, okay, here we go. This is starting off with a bang here. So Kansas State right out of the gates, long drive. It's 7-0, but Baylor gets the ball, their very first attempt, and they've not been good on their first drives this season, but they have the best drive of the entire year on offense, and I think it's pretty, much unanimous that that's the case. 5 plays, 72 yards. Got a little bit of Dominic Richardson on this drive, had a big reception by Drake Dabney for 19 yards. We're taking big chunks of yardage on this drive. Also had Josh Cameron get in on the action, Dabney again, and then eventually it was Blake Shapen to Dawson Pendergrass for a 13-yard touchdown. So they had the initial run for about 15 yards and threw it around after that, and they find themselves in the end zone. It's 7-7, and was definitely not thinking that upset was in the wind, but felt like it was probably the best drive we had seen all year, and it was a very nice response on the road to the opening score by the home team.
Yeah, and we kind of got a taste of what was to come on both these drives. It was simply put, Baylor was not going to get any stops if Kansas State had 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1. Just not happening. It was not going to be on the table for them to get stops in that regard. And then on Baylor's drive, it was very clear that Baylor's wide receivers, as the game progresses, this was kind of an idea of what was going to happen, where running backs, tight ends making plays in the pass game, receivers not so much.
Yep, so Dawson Pendergrass with the score at 7-7. And then Kansas State takes the ball and just takes off with it here. I mean, that was it. That was as close as the game would be the rest of the way, where them exchanging the opening drive touchdowns. K-State puts together an 8-play, 56-yard drive. They convert a 3rd and 7. They convert a 3rd and 3. And then on 2nd and 10, it is Will Howard to Ben Sinnott, a 14-yard touchdown. And that was a little bit of salt in the wound because he had such a big game last year, and you leave him completely uncovered in the end zone, who, he's he is their best option in the passing game, and he is there by his lonesome for the easy score. It is 14-7, and this is about to go off the rails here in a second.
Yeah, and tough one on that 3rd and 7 because there's a pass interference, I believe, on Caden Jenkins.
Yes, there was.
Against a very mediocre wide receiver for K-State. You can't have that happen. That was an opportunity for Baylor to get off field and get the ball back, but instead it leads to 7 points for Kansas State, and like you said, it's about to get a lot worse. It's why you got to make plays when they're there, and didn't make them on that drive, didn't make them all day.
Yeah, football's a game of inches, that Al Pacino said in any given Sunday, and it does ring true for this team in a lot of ways. And that was one of the things too. Aranda was talking in the post game, and also at the start of the week about execution, more so in the post game. Then on Monday, I think by Monday it was kind of like, it is what it is. But, that is something that rings true, is the execution piece. But at this point, when you're 10 weeks in and you lost 7 of those games, it's just hard to keep hearing the same thing. You know what I mean? So it's true. But, you've got to get off the field on third down. And they're in these first 2 drives already giving up a whole lot of third downs, like a handful of third downs in 2 drives to start the game. So that was a sign of things to come, and that's why it was 14-7. But it was about to get a lot worse as you have Baylor driven deep on the kickoff, not starting off with very good field position. And then you have Dominic Richardson start off the drive with a little 2-yard carry. But then the second play of the drive, Blake Shapen drops back to pass, hangs onto the ball too long, gets drilled, fumbles, and Kansas State recovers it. And they are in business and knocking on the door just like that, up 14-7. And now with the ball at the Baylor, 15-yard line, getting ready to.
No, they got it at the 2-yard line.
2-yard line, excuse me. Yeah, this play started at the 15-yard line, got it at the 2-yard line, and so they were set up right there on the doorstep. And it was going to be pretty automatic after that. Touchdown, Kansas State, and it is 21-7.
I'm sorry. Let's redo this. They returned that for a touchdown, that one. The punt that we're going to get to was at the 2-yard line. Yes. So that's coming up here in a second. But, yeah, I mean, this was a tough play. Blake does need to get rid of that football. But on the flip side, he got drilled. And, I mean, it's just really tough because he needed to hold on to the football to make a play, and his receivers, for the most part, were not open all day long, and he takes a big shot, fumbles it, can't be turned the ball over. On the flip side, nobody's open, trying to make a play, and you're on the road. Just kind of costly there. Yeah,
so you got all out of whack right here. So, yes, they fumble the football. Blake Shapen gets drilled, fumbles, and it was the scoop and score. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting back in order. Yeah, sorry. There's so many scores, it's hard to get out of control here. So it's 21-7, right, with the scoop and score.
14. It's about to be 21.
Okay, yeah, the way Fox lays this out, okay, I should probably go back to ESPN as far as the clarity of this. But, yeah, so they get hit, fumbles the football, and it's a scoop and score. It's 14-7. Is that where we are here?
Sorry. Okay, let's do this one more time. Kansas State scored on their first 2 drives. Then the fumble happens, return for a touchdown.
So it's 21-7, like I said. Yeah, yes, okay. Yeah. So it's 21-7.
We're back in order.
So it's 21-7 after the scoop and score touchdown. Baylor gets the football back, and it's a 3-and-out, and now it's about to really get off the rails as they go back to punt, and the exchange isn't good. Palmer Williams can't corral it, and it's a whole big mess. He gets tackled at the Kansas State 22. Is that where we are right here?
So I think he caught it. He gets drilled, ends up fumbling it, and they pick it up at the 2-yard line, and they score on the very next play. Okay. So I remember it unfolding there.
Yeah, tackle. See, this is all out of order. This is so strange. All right, I'm going to have to flip over because that is just totally out of whack. From the Fox side of it. It's got it like 4th and 7 and at the 22, and that's just not going to fly as far as trying to do this in a concise order. So let me try to get
yeah, so they scored that touchdown at the 2-yard line on 1st and goal. It was a pass from Will Howard to Christian Moore, which, again, ballooned the score even more. Baylor's going to get the ball back here, and now they're trying to get –
better.
Are you back
somewhat? Yeah, so okay. Desmond Purnell with the 15-yard fumble return makes it 21-7 after Baylor trying to get the it's 21-7 when Blake Shapen hits the this is all out of order. This is wild, man.
It's all out of order. Everything's out of order. But in general, it's the return for a touchdown makes it 21. Then the hit makes the hit on Palmer, and then they score again to make it 28, I believe. And then Baylor gets the ball back. But yeah, it's all out of whack on this.
So 14-7, it was Kansas State. Baylor got the football back, and then you had the 15-yard fumble return as Blake Shapen got drilled. So it was 21-7 there. Baylor gets the ball back, and then Palmer Williams goes to punt. No, that's
one more touchdown for Will Howard in between there, I guess.
Good Lord.
So another 3-and-out. It's all out of order. It's okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. The way that this is reading is so dadgum strange on here on both of the and I think it's because you had just the way that it ends the drives is all out of whack. So fumble return touchdown. It was 21-7.
Will Howard touchdown after another bad Baylor drive makes it 28-7, 9 plays, 78 yards in 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Baylor gets the ball back, 3 and out, and then they do the fumble.
Then it's the Palmer Williams fumble return.
35-7.
Okay, now it's 35-7.
Baylor
so
gets the ball back.
Yeah, so now at this, sorry that this is all out of order, but the way that these exchanges went down, it just got really weird really quickly. So basically, it's 35-7, just like that. Baylor gets the ball back, goes on a 13-play, 30-yard drive in 13 plays, takes over 6 minutes off the clock, but eventually on a 3rd and 10 can only get a 3-yard pickup. It's 4th and 13, and they're going to have to punt again, and it is 35-7 at this point. So it is just completely off the rails. So at this point, let's just start there. What were you thinking at this point in time?
Well, I mean, the game's over at that point in time because there was no way Baylor was scoring 30 points in this game based on what I had seen. There was also no way Baylor was going to get very many stops. And quite frankly, I told Garrett this when I walked in today and we talked a little bit. You know, if you would have told me that Kansas State was going to get 4 touchdowns basically from, essentially, I mean, so you get the pick six, you get the fumble return for a touchdown, and you get the punt fumble and score on the very next play. You get 3 touchdowns, 21 points from, just basically doing nothing offensively. I would have told you Baylor was going to lose by 40. And so that's basically what happened in this football game. And so, that's just kind of where it was. The luck wasn't on Baylor's side. The plays were being made by Kansas State, and it just felt like it was going to snowball.
Yeah, so it is 35-7, just like that. And I apologize for not having that more in order, but it is hard to read off every website I've looked at to try to make it look concise. We haven't had a problem with that all year, but because of just the exchanges here, it was a little bit out of whack. Yeah. So it was 21-7 after the first quarter. You had the 18-yard pass from Will Howard. You answered on the opening drive. Then Ben Sinnott on a 14-yard touchdown. Then you had the scoop and score. And so it was 21-7 at the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, another Will Howard run. Christian Moore on a 2-yard pass. It's 35-7 after you've had just mistakes galore. And then right there before the half, Dawson Pendergrass, a 1-yard pass from Blake Shapen as the Bears are able to score right there before halftime to make it 35-13. They would get the ball back again, but this was a short little drive, 3 plays, 16 yards, and they were able to at least get on the board again, but not able to convert the 2-point conversion, which was a little head-scratching of why you were going for it, down 35-13, because I guess you would be within 30. What was it, within
19?
19, and at that point in time, I'm not really sure why that mattered all that much, but okay, so they went for it and did not get it, and so 35-13 was your score at that point.
I do want to give a shout out because Baylor was set up on that drive by a really nice return by Josh Cameron.
Yes.
And so that kind of led to them scoring this touchdown on this drive. And really, 35 if they make the extra point instead of going for 2. 35-14, you're thinking, okay, you're still getting pummeled, but at least you got some momentum going into half. I don't know why they went for 2. They go for 2 so often, and then but it's the weirdest thing. But then the Houston game, you have a chance to win the game and you don't go for 2. So it's kind of one of those, I don't know, it's just a weird thing, weird situation going on there. But scoring a touchdown before half was definitely nice, I think, for Baylor, even though you're down big.
Yeah, so it's out of reach, but I felt like here's the deal. As ugly as all of this got, they were still playing really hard. This was not a team that you thought when they got swarmed early on and it was like 21-7, it's 28-7, it's 35-7, and you feel like, oh man, this team's about it's so early in the game. You're wondering how many points Kansas State's going to score at this stage, and so here they are, and they're still fighting away. And I know that's not totally reassuring for everybody out there, but it was something. It was something to see them still playing hard and not looking to try and shine this up by any means. It was ugly. There's no way to make this look pretty, but there is that they were at least still out there playing hard, and this wasn't a team that had seemingly quit on their coaches or, were mailing it in at this point. And that was as reassuring of a thing as you could see in a game like this at this point in the season for a team sitting where they are. Yeah,
and then I loved how they got brave on the next kickoff as well. Kind of snuck in an onside kick there. They recover it, and that gives you an opportunity again, they get an opportunity, they created a chance for themselves, and they ran an awesome fake play, too, right before the half. Isaiah Hankins actually threw an absolute dime to Jake Roberts. Probably, I think if you asked Jake, he probably would have said he would catch that 9 out of 10 times. But he drops it, decent defense on it. But again, if you kick that field goal, it's 35-16. If you would have made the extra point, it's 35-17. But instead, they tried to get to gamble a little bit. Didn't pay off, but again, you're still playing hard. You're still trying to make plays and trying to make up the difference between the two teams by trick plays or just things like that.
So they had the onside kick. They get the ball and end up turning it over on downs, right, unfortunately, because
the trick play.
You go with the trick play with Isaiah Hankins trying to throw the pass on 4th down and 8. So it's incomplete, and they were throwing everything but the kitchen sink out there at this point. I mean, trick plays, just trying to get something going. That was something Paul had mentioned. I was like, yeah, they're going to have to do more than that, but they definitely tried to do as much of that as possible to keep this thing going and keep their hopes alive and keep the offense on the field. So, yeah, can't get it going there on 4th and 8. They converted a 4th and 4 on that drive, but that would end it right there. K-State would get the ball back and would go 3 and out, and that would basically close out the first half there. So a lot to digest from that first half. There was a lot going on, but it was 35-13 at the break, and the writing was kind of on the wall here. But those, the scoop and score obviously was a huge play early on that it really kind of tilted the momentum, and then it was just an avalanche where you looked up and you were down 4 touchdowns in the blink of an eye, but 35-13 there at the half.
Yeah, I mean they were outplayed in the first half, but they weren't outplayed by as much as the score said. I mean, if you really watch that game, I mean, yes, if you're going to say if they would have punted, Kansas State probably still would have scored. That's totally fine, but they wouldn't have scored as quickly as they did. I mean, those turnovers just led this to being a complete blowout at halftime. I mean, this game was over at the end of the first quarter, definitely over at halftime, down by 22 points on the road. It's just tough. Baylor's not a team. I mean, they're not a good team as is, but definitely not a good team if you're going to be giving the other team 3 defensive special teams touchdowns. That's just never going to work out. But in general, I was pretty happy with Baylor's performance. 13 points on the road against Kansas State. A couple of opportunities there to have a few more points as well at halftime. That's actually a pretty good showing in my eyes offensively. The defense was pretty mediocre, though. Pretty not good, honestly.
Yeah, no, it was a tough day for the defense, and I think I found a better way to kind of look at this moving forward that I'll use. But, it was a really tough day for the defense, and you had just gotten swarmed in the first half. So that is what it was, but let's get into the second half now. You get the ball to start the third quarter, and you go 3 and out, and it's one of those situations where you really needed, if this is going to be any kind of a hopeful sort of a deal, you're going to need to come out and swing in the second half, but not able to do that. Just a lot of incompletions after getting a big gain on first down. Blake Shapen incomplete on first down, incomplete second down, incomplete third down, and you have to punt it away. K-State gets the ball back, and they go 9 plays and 62 yards, and they kick a field goal, 33 yards by Chris Tennant, and it is now 38-13. Early in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add here. Game's over. Baylor needed to score on that opening drive. It just, the very end of the first half and the very beginning of the second half, Baylor really needed to make up some ground, and they had opportunities to. The not kicking the extra point, not kicking a field goal, or not converting on 4th down, not having a good drive there. It's just a tough way to kind of close out the quarter and start the third quarter, even though they'd been playing pretty good, and it's going to continue right here.
Yeah, 3 plays, 72 yards. Drake Dabney, a big 63-yard touchdown catch from Blake Shapen on a 3rd down and 1. One of the more exciting plays of the day. Quick 3-play, 72-yard drive. It's 38-19, and there's wait a second. Is there some chance here? Probably not likely, and definitely not after the next exchange. But, yeah, it was great to see Drake Dabney, another 100-yard game for him. So first time he's done that in a while, but
he's been awesome.
He's been really good this year. He's been a bright spot, and their most consistent receiving target all year long is safe to say with Keytron Jackson obviously missing time. But even then, when he was playing, it was still Drake Dabney making most of the big catches. So, yeah, he's been a huge bright spot for them this year. And Monterey Baldwin has had his moments too, but just not consistently enough. And so I think Dabney would be like your receiver of the year probably.
Yeah, Baldwin in this game.
We won't talk about him till later.
Yeah,
because,
I know. Because we're not going to talk about a catch from him until the very end of the game. It was pretty bad, and then they went for 2 again on this drive. So just leaving points out there right now.
Yep, so Drake
this
Dabney,
one made sense, though, by the way, because it would have cut it to 38-21, 17-point game.
Yeah, so Drake Dabney with the touchdown, but the 2-point conversion is no good. So it is 38-19 within Kansas State, 9 plays, 73 yards. Trayshawn Ward with a 4-yard touchdown. They converted a 4th and 8 on that drive. That would have gotten Baylor off the field. So, boom, touchdown. It's 45-19. Turn right around. Blake Shapen gets intercepted. 45-yard pick 6 to go along with the scoop and score fumble earlier in the game. And, boom, just like that, it was 38-19. Then it was 45-19, and now it's 52-19. And this one is way over. Both teams would exchange, drives, basically. Baylor turned it over on downs. K-State turned it over on downs. Baylor turned it over on downs. They exchanged punts the next 3 drives. There was a lot of just nothing there. It stayed 52-19 for a while, and then Blake Shapen a little bit later on with under 5 to go in the fourth quarter. Throw to Josh Cameron. He fumbles, gets recovered by Kansas State. They would turn that into a 3-play, 38-yard touchdown drive to make it 59-19. So another turnover comes back to bite them here, as that directly led to multiple touchdowns in this game. 59-19, and then Baylor would close the game with a 10-play, 77-yard drive, where you'd have some penalties coming into play to extend that drive, converting 4th and 4 on that drive, and then eventually, though, on 3rd and goal, Blake Shapen to Monterey Baldwin, who we just mentioned, his first catch of the game with 20 seconds left to go, and it's in the end zone for the touchdown. So he gets a touchdown, but 1 catch, 6 yards with 20 seconds remaining in the game, and that was really just lipstick on the pig that made this look better, because otherwise it was, 59-19, a 40-point loss. Yeah. Instead is just a 34-point loss because you're able to get the score there. And then Isaiah Hankins misses the extra point, which, I've kind of touched on that. I don't understand what's going on there in the kicking game here since the accolades about 3 weeks ago.
The Cincinnati game, when he had his best performance.
Yeah, it's been a little off ever since then. And so, you get the score there at the end of the game, which granted is meaningless, but then miss the extra point. It's just like, I don't know.
Had to keep the scoregami intact.
I guess so.
So this is the first time a game has ever ended 59-25 in the history of college football.
Oh, so making history, baby.
He made history by missing that extra point. That's pretty cool. I will say that drive that you mentioned to make it 45-19 with that 4th and 8 conversion, that was a really take your soul type drive. That was hey, you're in our house. We're going to come in and we're just going to put this game away. You got a little hope. Now we're going to take that away. The pick 6 was a terrible throw by Shapen. You mentioned the fumble by Josh Cameron. That was kind of an exclamation point on what was a terrible day for the Baylor wide receivers. It just was dreadful. They were not in sync at all with Blake Shapen. Really was the tight ends and the running backs that did most of the damage. And then a couple things late. Kansas State throwing the football on 1st and 10 up by 33 points.
Yeah.
With 3:30 left in the game. Come on, really?
I hope somebody marked that down for his future reference if they ever have the opportunity to make that matter. But
you're at the 28-yard line and there's 3:30 left and you're throwing the football on 1st down. It's not even 3rd down where you're trying to put the game away. They threw it on 1st down on a play action. That was pretty ridiculous. And then a lot of people mentioned, it's ridiculous Blake Shapen's in the game. Okay, that's fine. But I think based on what we've seen this year, that offense needs a lot of work and they need all the reps they can get. So I wasn't exactly appalled by it, but I also understand kind of the reasoning why people would be upset with, Blake Shapen going out there, potentially getting hurt at the end of the game. And then Monterey Baldwin, fun stat here, not very fun actually. So that catch that he had for a touchdown was his first catch of the game, despite having, I believe, 10 targets in the game. Just just completely a non-factor until the very end. He and Shapen just weren't on the same key in this game, and unfortunately, that was the story with all the wide receivers. Lots of drops, lots of missed opportunities in the pass game. And then you look at the stats, and it's like Blake Shapen has 253 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he also gave up 2 touchdowns with the pick 6 and the fumble return for a touchdown. So off and on game for him.
Yeah, it really was, and tough loss, 59-25. Sorry I was so scrambled there in the beginning, but that's fitting for this game and kind of how it went, honestly. But I at least found a tool in the meantime that should make it a little bit clearer if they have, and there is an opportunity they give up 59 points again. I can at least explain it a little bit better. But, yeah, they just got swarmed in that first quarter. 21-7, mistakes mounted. K-State obviously had some good drives, and then by halftime, I mean, you were really drowning, and it was all but elementary at that point. But in the second half, still got even worse. You were outscored 17-6 there in the third quarter, so you gave up 21, 14, 17, and then that final frame, 7-6. But that, I mean, it was so over already at that point. So yeah, anyways, 59-25. Ugly first half, ugly second half, ugly game, ugly result. And now Grayson, they're 3-7, and a bowl game's completely off the table. You look at that, and you did mention, Blake Shapen with the 4 touchdowns, but did have a couple of turnovers there. I guess Dominic Richardson had some nice moments, but I mean, I really feel like we're kind of grasping at straws at this point with even saying, too much about guys just simply running for close to 100 yards. Yeah. Like that's how lowly the running game has become, is like that's a bright spot, is running for 89 yards.
And with the sacks, they ended up with 85 yards on 2.4 yards per carry. It was not a good performance. They missed Keytron Jackson badly. Like, it's becoming so obvious. I mean, I know you can say that Shapen was inaccurate at times. There were drops all over the place on this field. And I also think Keytron opens up things for Monterey. So they really desperately need him back this week, which I believe they will be getting him back. But they need him badly to help kind of maintain a good passing game throughout an entire game.
Yeah, Dave Arena did say Keytron Jackson should be back this week, so that is obviously good news. And other names that could be potentially returning, just kind of here and there, like Devontae Tizzino is one of those that he mentioned. Also mentioned Bryson Washington, who really could only play in one of these next 2 games to maintain his red shirt. So, maybe that means he's coming back for the very last game. I don't know. But
why are – I mean, I understand that you're bringing up a freshman. I think Bryson's going to be a great player, but, I mean, it's almost the end of the year. Can we just, like, experiment with giving Richard Reese the football instead of adding a 4th running back to the fold? Just maybe? I don't know.
I mean, I don't even know what he sees anyways. I mean, I think he was just mentioning that he was coming back. But, yeah, I mean, I was just puzzled because there's 2 games left. He's already played in 3, so at best he should only play in 1 game, so it's really not that big of a deal. But, yeah, the Richard Reese thing remains totally puzzling. And I know that it has to do with whatever it has to do with their style of offense or their offensive line or whatever. But, I mean, it's really weird to have him have the year that he had last year and to have such a little impact this year. It's bizarre.
But they're not even, like, trying
to
have him make an impact. It's not even that he's not being great on the field, which I understand. I mean, none of these running backs have been stellar, but he's just not even getting opportunities, and it's been a lot more Dominic Richardson and Dawson Pendergrass, especially Dominic Richardson. I mean, he's gotten the ball a ton, and then Pendergrass has scored a lot. He's been great in the red zone. But, yeah, it's just weird. This was a bad performance, and it's really tough. You want to see this team at least kind of play better towards the end of the year to kind of find any reason to have positive thoughts going into this offseason. But they haven't been able to show that. And you're expecting young guys to get better. You're expecting guys to continue to play hard for their coach. But we're going to need to see that over these next 2 games. Because if they completely no-show the next 2 games, it might be a sign that the locker room is turning in a different direction. And if that happens, I don't know that you're going to have much of a choice when it comes to decisions this offseason.
Aranda in Monday's press conference did mention that he feels like they're all still bought in as far as the team goes. It's a tough time for coaches, especially young families, because there's all that uncertainty and all the speculation. And so it's just kind of weird in the offices. People don't want to make eye contact with you because, it's just there's just those bad feelings in the air of like what could happen and changes on the horizon and uncertainty, all of that. But he did still say that, they're working through that, but also they're very well aware of, what losing means and how that can affect your roster. And he just flat out said that he's sure like some of their guys are being recruited right now. Like he just fully said that. And I mean, I know we all know that's true, but it's still just odd to hear it. And it's also just the reality of like, we are at the end of the year, and that is basically what they have to start focusing on, is playing defense, not on the field as much as they do off the field for this roster, and playing offense in a lot of ways as well. Like they've got signing day coming up. They've got the portal opening up here pretty soon. You can best believe there's teams that are seeing them struggle that have recruited some of these guys that are in their DMs or whatever. And I don't even know where to begin with all of that, or how they combat that, or what all of that even looks like until we start to, I guess, hear, guys announcing that they're entering the portal, and we'll go from there. But that's all that stuff's building up right now, and it's right around the corner for them to have to deal with. And with not making a bowl game, I mean, it's all about the offseason here in a couple of weeks, and that's what they're ramping up for right now, even though they've obviously still got a couple of games to play. So it was all bad. It was an ugly game. Kansas State still, in a very interesting mix as far as the Big 12 title race goes with a couple of weeks to go. There's a lot of tiebreaker scenarios, but Baylor doesn't have to worry about any of that. They are not involved. And so now they turn their attention towards TCU. And, Grayson, TCU, a team that's had their own struggles this year, not a big grand follow-up to their national championship appearance run. That was a great year last year. Everything seemingly went their way until the final couple of games when they lost late to Kansas State and lost the Big 12 title. They beat Michigan in the semis. Huge win, but then go to the national championship game and get just scorched by the Georgia Bulldogs. And then big offseason, make the change at OC with losing Garrett Riley, replace him with Kendall Briles, so that'll be an interesting matchup coming up this weekend. And then retooled their roster through the transfer portal quite a bit, but now got Josh Hoover at quarterback. Chandler Morris is healthy again, but they've stuck with Hoover, even though Morris was a Baylor killer a couple of years ago. But they seem to have something with Hoover, although he's still a young player. Got some playmakers as well, but it's just been a struggle. They're not winning the close games, and, just most recently here, had an opportunity to maybe knock down Texas, but could not finish off that upset bid and got off to too slow of a start to make that happen. Fresh off that loss, they're sitting in a situation where they're also just trying to make sure that they're in a bowl game when all is said and done. Now at 2-5, no, that's not right. They're not 2-5 in the conference is where they are. They've got to win a couple of games here at the end, and that's easier said than done at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people are going to sit here and say Baylor's been way worse than TCU, and that's fine. They have been. Like, if you look at advanced metrics and all that, that's great. But at the end of the day, TCU is 4-6 and Baylor is 3-7. Neither team's been good this year. Neither team has much to hang their hat on. TCU, I believe they've lost, 5 of their last 6 games, I think. Lost to West Virginia, Iowa State, a win over BYU, who's terrible on the road. I mean, they just crushed them. Then lost to Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Texas. I mean, they've just been losing nonstop since Josh Hoover really took over. They've been bad, which is kind of surprising to hear that Chandler Morris is healthy. I did not realize that he was good to go, because I'm surprised they're sticking with Hoover, who has 8 interceptions. He's got an interception every single appearance so far this season for TCU. He's been a turnover machine, and it's been a huge problem for them. Their run game has started to suffer over the last few weeks. Their defense is pretty mediocre, and honestly, during the back half here, the last 3 games against Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Texas, they've given up 587 yards, 428 yards, and 482 yards in the last 3 games. I mean, they're just getting scorched defensively, and their offense hasn't really been able to do much to keep up either. It's been a very disappointing year for them.
Yeah, and Chandler Morris is not fully healthy, but there's been murmurs about him getting closer. So I guess That's why they've still stuck with Hoover.
Great, watch him come back for this game.
I mean, there was a lot it felt like last week that he was pretty much getting close to getting the green light, and I don't know if that ever got to be the case. It looks like they're still not quite there with him. Which is why, in part, we've still seen Hoover. But, yeah, I mean, I guess in theory he could be close to coming back for this weekend because he was on the doorstep of it, it appeared last week. So, yeah, if they wanted to, that could be a move potentially. If they wanted to throw a little curveball there, give you some nightmares for Chandler Morris back out there after what happened a couple years ago. That's certainly a possibility. But, yeah, Josh Hoover's been the guy now for the last few weeks. I mean, he had they should have won the Tech game in so many ways. There was a couple of bad interceptions there late. One was his fault, one was not his fault, but still it cost them greatly in that game. When they had just gotten back the momentum, they threw a couple of really costly picks, and Texas Tech made him pay. But he's not all bad. He's capable of making some plays, and so he can definitely do some damage to this Baylor defense. But also Amani Bailey had nearly 100 yards last week. He's a very dangerous runner. Savion Williams had a huge game for them last week. 11 catches, 164 yards, and a touchdown. So you got to be aware of him. Jared Wiley, who we saw at Temple and has been at TCU now for forever, is another big target. And Baylor's not the best about covering tight ends. So there's just some of the names to probably get used to that will most likely have a big impact this weekend. But, yeah, whether they roll with Hoover or Morris, Hoover is capable of hurting you, but he's also a young quarterback that's capable of making mistakes. But, and then defensively, I mean, does it really matter what's lining up across in so many ways? I mean, at this point, it doesn't, but they do have their susceptibilities, and so I guess there's some things you could take advantage of, but it's, that's also banking on Baylor operating at a high level. And outside of the first drive last week, that's been kind of few and far between.
Right. I think the thing to just keep in mind is that when Baylor does run for 150 yards, they have a chance. Like, they're going to have to go in and run for 150 yards, and they have not done that very consistently at all throughout this season. But against the bad defenses they've played, they've been able to hit right around that number. So when you're looking at not Cincinnati, but Houston, UCF, Long Island, which is a different level of bad, but they've had some success on the ground. And so I kind of look at this game and see a path for them to at least be capable on the ground. I don't think they're going to get completely shut down. Like I mentioned, TCU, they gave up 343 yards on the ground to Kansas State, 146 to Tech, 165 to Texas, 215 to Iowa State, 201 to West Virginia, 158 to SMU. I mean, it's just bad. It's really bad what they've done, giving up yards on the ground. So I expect Baylor to test that. Go out, run the football, try to control time possession. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's ultimately going to come down to simply making plays. They're going to need to force some turnovers of Josh Hoover. They're going to need to be able to take care of the football themselves, maintain time of possession, run the football, and then Blake Shapen's going to have to play a really good game if they're going to want to go on the road and actually get this win.
So with Baylor, we know that these are the final two games. There is nothing in doubt about that. TCU this week on the road, and then they will return home and play West Virginia. But for TCU, they do have the chance still of a postseason. They need to beat Baylor, which they're a couple of touchdown favorites to do so. But then they also travel to Oklahoma to close out the year. So they have to win they have to win both games. But that's still something that's on the line dangling for them. But even if they beat Baylor, that's still going to be a long shot to go beat Oklahoma. So we'll see. But still, there's an opportunity there. So.
Yeah, and I do want to mention this game is now officially being called the Blue Bonnet Battle, in what is officially one of the worst names I've ever heard for a rivalry in college football. It should be the Revivalry. That's the one that everyone has gotten used to, but the Blue Bonnet Battle, terrible.
Yes, we got the email just kind of out of nowhere about there being this press conference, and I know it's been the big joke. I have not been on social media much at all this year in general. I don't know. It's just not as much a part of my routine. And Twitter's just not as fun anymore. I don't know what it is. I think if they were winning, maybe I'd be on there a little bit more, but that also adds to it. It's like, what's the point? But you started to see that circulating about this logo being leaked, and then there was like, what's going on here? And then there's this email, and then there's a big announcement, and you're like, well, surely that's not that. Oh, wait, is that what that is? And then, yes, it was in fact correct. The leak, the Blue Bonnet Battle was a real thing, and it was what was in the cards, and it was what was unveiled on Monday via the Zoom link, and then they had the big debut of not only the name but the trophy as well, which people have thoughts on, both very strong thoughts, and so I don't know where all this came from, but it's the Blue Bonnet Battle now, and not the Revivalry, but I think it's been pretty unanimous that people feel pretty strongly that is not the best change, and it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of traction, and it'll be interesting to see how much longevity this idea, this trophy, this name, all of it has in comparison to what has worked for so very long, which was the Revivalry. I get putting something a little bit more official on it, but Blue Bonnet Battle just feels very low effort. I mean, it really does feel very like what's the most generic Texas-ish thing that we can name this? Blue Bonnet Battle.
And the way it was described was just even worse.
Yeah,
it was like, oh yeah, you drive down 35 and in the middle of the highway you see blue bonnets. I'm like, dude, seriously? And talking about, in Texas, the blue bonnet means so much. I'm like, okay, it's state flower. That's cool. And even Dave Aranda was like, when you...
Dave Aranda was cracking jokes on it.
Yeah, he was like, when you associate it with football, it's a little weird, which is where I stand. I think it's a terrible name. It is so just... has nothing to do with football. It doesn't make sense at all. Very disappointed in it. And apparently, this just came down to what the two student organizations came up with. It wasn't even like up to the highest parts of the schools. It was literally Baylor's, whoever the student body president is, and TCU's student body president, those guys coming together, making this decision, and then having the Zoom call with Sonny Dykes, Mac Rhodes, Dave Aranda, all on this call as they're explaining it. It was pretty bad.
It was just very fitting for this year, honestly. I mean, it was very fitting of just like, yeah, this makes sense too. Let's throw this on the pile here. But yeah, I don't know. It was just very out of nowhere. It felt very much like a school project of like, what can we do for the semester? Let's come up with a new name for the rivalry and a trophy. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a project for the semester. And then everybody just somehow went along with it. And to the point of where it's now an official thing. And I don't know. It's just not nearly as cool as it should be. The rivalry is a much better name. It didn't need all of this other stuff. I mean, a trophy, sure. Like, I know, especially in the new Big 12, you want to kind of make things like this a little more official and all of that. But I don't like. It's like there was no checks and balances along the way. No. And all of a sudden, it's just like we somehow arrived at this point where we're all just going through with it and just signing off on it. And Dave Aranda's cracking jokes about like, yeah, you drive up down 35 and you see blue bonnets, and he's trying not to laugh. And then this is the best example I could use to describe how this is gone off. It's always a good sign when everybody immediately starts pointing the finger afterwards on whose fault it was.
Right.
And like, you mean like, well, I heard it was the TCU students that were really pushing this thing. Well, I heard it was the Baylor students that were really the ideas behind this, and they made the trophy in Waco, and it's all there. And so both sides are like, no, it was you that came up with this. It's like, no, you came up with this, and it's like, so neither one wants to claim it.
No. And
nobody thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah, no one likes it. It's
so
unanimous.
What are we doing here?
I don't know.
And everybody's just signing off on it.
And we made a trophy. Someone just decided, hey, we're just going to make a trophy that looks awful. It's got like, I mean, it's literally this big circle inside a trophy holder. I mean, it was really bad. It was tough to watch, honestly. Tough to watch the Zoom and just hear that explanation.
And everybody's just gritting through uncomfortable smiles and just playing along. Like, we're just all just playing along with it. I don't know. It's an interesting pivot from the rivalry that I haven't seen really one positive comment on in the 24 hours since.
And apparently that was TCU's fault because it's too religious is what I'd heard.
Yeah,
but
again, that goes back to everybody's pointing fingers because nobody wants to take the culpability for this even being a thing now. And it's like, well, somehow everybody agreed on it and both sides were a part of this. But yeah, TCU wants to say it was Baylor's fault. Baylor wants to say it was TCU students. And yeah, nobody seems to want to be like, yeah, I'm the one that came up with this. But in all seriousness, Blue Bonnet Battle, that's very low effort. I mean, very low effort.
Can we just anything better? There could be so many things that would be better, but we're just gonna hey, go with it. I'm supposed to sit here and call this game the Blue Bonnet Battle. That's not happening.
Yeah, and I mean, if there is some truth to it, and again, who knows what's true? Because again, everybody's just trying to pass the buck as far as why this all came to be. But if there is any semblance of truth to like TCU not wanting to have any religious affiliation, then just take the C out of your name at this point. I mean, honestly, if it's to that point where we can't have a rivalry name that has any sort of connotation about religion, so I don't know if that's true or not. But I did definitely see that comment made, and if it is, then yeah, just change your entire school name and let's just be done with the whole charade
Texas
to begin
Central
with.
University.
Yeah. I mean, let's just pivot entirely from it because look how much damage it's doing to the point where you got to change a harmless, much better suited rivalry name now.
Right, and now you got to look at it and you're like, oh, TCU versus Baylor's the Blue Bonnet Battle. What's Iowa State, K-State? Oh, Farmageddon? That's really cool. And we got to sit here with this. I mean, it was, like I said, very disappointed in that. Low effort and not great for a rivalry that is, according to Mac Rhodes, the longest Texas rivalry in the state, the most games played. which it just passed Texas and Texas A&M, which I was a little surprised by.
Yeah, no, there's some longstanding history, and it was not history that K-State or Iowa State fans seem to comprehend, which is understandable.
Yeah.
We don't care about Farmageddon in most cases here, but yeah, like they even use the poor naming of the rivalry to be like, you got rid of Farmageddon for the Blue Bonnet Battle? Like I mean, rivalry-wise though, like Baylor TCU has every right to be the one that they maintain versus Farmageddon, but
Kansas State chose Kansas. I mean,
right.
They couldn't have two. I mean, so it is what it is. They chose to play the team in state instead of you. I mean, that's the way it went.
Yeah, so there was complaining about that, but it's like, the name doesn't really have anything to do with it, but it doesn't help the argument either. When you're like, it's just kind of like, wait, what? Farmageddon versus the Blue Bonnet Battle. So I don't know. I don't know what the future long-lasting power of that name will be, but that was something this week and just kind of was very fitting in so many ways. Just football's a mess right now. Everything football touches is kind of a mess.
I really hope I don't see a graphic on Saturday that says Blue Bonnet Battle.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
I mean, I hope not. I hope it's too recent that they don't put it on there. I'm really hopeful because it's on ESPN Plus, right? Again, yeah, another one.
They have become an ESPN Plus team, and that's also the rivalry or whatever. That game being an ESPN Plus game really speaks to just where this team is, but also where TCU is as well. I mean, if they were really good, then this would maybe be on a different network. But, yeah, it's been a string now of ESPN Plus games. And so that's something when you kind of take the bigger picture into consideration, you have to, be mindful of that. And that's not a good trajectory or a path to be on, is not being on, network TV all very much at all this season because of how much of a slide you've been on. So, everything's crazy. 2 games to go. TCU this weekend, 14 point underdogs
14
as it stands right now. But we'll see on Saturday how all that unfolds, and we'll answer some more questions about that coming up. But let's pivot to basketball real quick, and the fact that that's now in full swing, and you've got the Baylor men right now at 3-0 overall. As last Tuesday we previewed a little bit, but got the win over Auburn, 88-82 in South Dakota at Sanford Pentagon. Turned around on Thursday, beat John Brown 96-70, and then on Sunday, 77-62 over Gardner-Webb. So there are the Bears on the men's side of things through the first 3 games, and some hard-fought games here in these first 3 contests. But later on tonight, Tuesday night, as we record this, Kansas City coming up at the Farrell Center, and that will be a late tip-off, 9 o'clock tip-off Central Time. So be up a little bit late for the Bears trying to move to 4-0, which they likely should, and then we'll have a little bit of a break until next week. But your thoughts on the 3-0 start in Kansas City later tonight?
Yeah, it hasn't been very impressive, honestly. I mean, the Auburn game was impressive, but the other 2 games were just kind of I don't want to say they were just coasting, but it kind of felt like that, right? It kind of felt like they weren't playing with the same kind of urgency that they showed in the Auburn game. I get it with John Brown. They were playing quick turnaround after playing a very emotional first game of the year. But then they showed up against Gardner-Webb and just didn't play very well. There wasn't a good flow, I felt like. And obviously they didn't hit a 3-pointer all game, which is the first time in years that they haven't hit one. I don't remember the exact stat, but it had been a really, really long time. They got to get back on track. They got to get back to playing really good basketball. And the thing of it is, I mean, they're going to play a really, really tough schedule, the rest of this non-conference slate. So they're going to have to kind of get back on track before that starts. They play Kansas City this week, who, quick note about them, they played St. Mary's, which is a school in San Antonio, a small school, and they blew them out. Outside of that, I mean, it's been really, they haven't played anybody. So I expect Baylor to win this one pretty easily, and then get ready for some tough battles next week, as they got Oregon State and then likely Florida, I believe, in that tournament. It's probably how that's going to play out for them. But, yeah, they got some stuff to work on, I would say.
Yeah, it's early in the season. They're still unscathed record-wise, so that's good. But, yeah, they got some bigger names coming up here that will, test that and test them. And it's just a lot of new to take in with this basketball team and kind of absorb. So they're going to be working through some things, but still very bright outlook on the season, and just going to be a matter of how it all comes together on a daily and nightly basis. But 3-0's you'll take that no matter how ugly it is, but definitely got to sharpen up some things.
Yeah, and I think just looking at the new guys, Ray J. Dennis averaging 5 turnovers a game. That's That's got to change. That's way too many turnovers. That's not something that you want to see. I will say, Eve Misi has been really, really good. The freshman, as has Jacoby Walter. Langston Love getting things on track has been awesome off the bench for them. Jaden Nunn at times. But the turnovers are an area that I'm looking at. And then defensively, I still have some question marks with their perimeter defense. But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. They're going to get pushed definitely in the next few games, in the next, really month. They're really going to have some tough tests, but we'll get to know more about them. It might just be kind of a rough patch these last 2 games.
So Kansas City coming up tonight, and then a little bit of a break until next Wednesday, but we'll preview the next round of action when we get there. Meanwhile, the Baylor women, just one game in the book so far. Last Monday, last Monday, their only game so far, and they beat Southern 85-53 to move to 1-0. So now, later on tonight, their second game, but a big game, number 4 Utah, upcoming at the Farrell Center. So that'll be a big one for Nikki Collin and the Baylor women. That'll be over on ESPN Plus starting at 6:30. But yeah, number 4 Utah, they'll turn around and host Harvard on Sunday as well. So that's what's in store for them this week.
Yeah, excited for this matchup against Utah. I think we're going to learn a lot about this Baylor team. I know when Nikki Collin was on with Sikkim 365 Radio, she kind of mentioned that, this is a team that's going to get better as the season goes on. Well, if you're being the number 4 team in the country, you're off to a pretty good start, with becoming the team that you ultimately want to be. Yeah, I'm curious how they do here. Utah's had a nice start to the season. They've looked pretty dominant in their 2 games, so I'm curious how Baylor kind of deals with a Utah team that's been really good the last few years.
So there you go. There's where basketball is. Some upcoming contests early in the season, but, working through some things and sharpening, iron sharpens iron, and we'll see where this journey takes us. But getting it kick-started is a lot of fun, especially in light of football season and the struggles there. You got much higher hopes for both basketball squads that they'll find some success and have fun seasons. So let's get in the mailbag here. I think that we've covered everything. Lomer Superfan, assuming the same staff is back next year, what position group, which is currently a weakness, do you have the most confidence in correcting this offseason? Offensive line and defensive front 7 seems like the biggest weakness.
Yeah, I would think that, it would be the defensive line would be the area that I have the most confidence in them fixing, just because they have a lot of young talent guys who they just need to grow and develop. I think you can find some defense linemen in the portal. You'll get Jackie Marshall back. You'll have healthy nose tackles with Rel Boykins and Trey Emery. I just see a lot of signs there that should tell me that they'll be better up front on the defensive side. The offensive line, they're so bad this year. It's like, how do they go from being this bad to being, really good? I don't know that I see the pieces quite yet. They would need a lot of development and a lot of transfers, honestly, to come in and solidify that.
That is clear and away their number one problem.
Yes.
It is not even close, in my opinion. I know you can't stop the run, you can't get pressure on the quarterback, but you can't do anything on offense that you want to do.
No.
And, it just immediately right out of the gates, it's like, are they going to be able to run the football? No? Okay. Just going to pass it 35 times today, I guess. Used to at least be able to line up and be like, we're going to go for it on 4th and 2. And you know what? We're going to get it. And I know it's a young offensive line. There's a lot of inexperience, but they just simply cannot. If this is going to come back basically intact, you better get 5 transfers on the offensive line alone. You cannot try and run this back. It's been the biggest culprit to every issue on offense, and it all starts there. And that's been the biggest thing that you can say what you want. Wide receivers getting open. Well, if there's not time to get it to them, it doesn't matter. And Richard Reese, this and that. Well, if there's nothing to run for or run to, it doesn't matter.
If you can't run the ball, you can't protect your quarterback.
Everything swirls back to the offensive line. So, the most confidence in the defensive line because I think you can make the quicker impact right there. But they're both big weaknesses for sure, and offensive line has the edge there. So that would be very high on the to-do list. Scotty B. the Baylor King, why is TCU's offense so inconsistent?
They're relying on a quarterback to throw the ball a ton. Their run game's been so up and down this year. They're turning the ball over a lot. I just think in general, that's why they're inconsistent. And it's kind of in line with what we've seen from Kendall Briles, truthfully, throughout his career, honestly. You looked at Arkansas and other places. At times, they were really good, looked dominant, took advantage of matchups. But then at times, it was like, what are you doing? what are you calling? You can't run the ball. Now you're throwing it all over the parking lot, throwing interceptions, not giving yourself a chance, not controlling time of possession, and it really can cost you.
Yeah, I will say their offensive line's not nearly as good as it was last year when they were super just like talented everywhere you looked. So that's not as good. Obviously, the quarterback play is not as good. You had the injury to Morris, so you're throwing Hoover into the fire. He's a young guy with not a lot of experience, and so he's got some flashes of being really good, and then he's got like really bad interceptions or turnovers in general that plagued that team. And Kendall gets a lot of flack, and I'm not saying he's not deserving of some of it, but like in the Texas Tech game, it's like, dude, they're in scoring position, and Josh Hoover, like the receiver breaks off the route and doesn't go for it, and so it's a pick. And it's like, that's not really Kendall Briles' fault. No. But there are moments that are very much like, what are you doing? And it is kind of what you described. So it's just a mixture of all those things that we mentioned. Not as much talent, inexperience, play calling, bad decision-making, turnovers. It all makes for a stew on offense that makes it inconsistent. So, yeah, that's where they find themselves. Who do you think leads the team in scoring for Baylor women's basketball in a top 25 showdown against Utah?
I'm going to go with Sarah Andrews.
Yeah, that seems like as safe a bet as any, right? Sarah Andrews seems like a safe pick. I'll go Dreana Edwards. Keep it going from the last game. And the nice start there against Southern. So how about that? We'll go a couple of different options there. Let's see. Elsewhere, the question was just why from Barrel of 89. Why?
I don't have an answer to why. I mean, yeah, it's been a bad year. Is that what he's referring to?
I guess so. Yeah, why? Why this pain? Why this? I don't know.
Why everything?
Yeah. Everybody's wondering the same thing of why. Why is it where it is right now? I guess the program, a lot of different reasons why, but the solution's the biggest key now is finding out what the solution to all that is. Overall, Minion, do y'all think the offseason will look much different if a CDA Aranda stays or if a new coach comes in? Seems like we will need to focus on retaining players, hitting the portal hard, and instilling a new offense. Either way, thanks for all y'all do.
Yeah, I mean, the offseason will look very different if they bring in a new coach or if they keep Dave Aranda. Yes, the focus will somewhat be the same, but if a new coach comes in, he's going to clean house, I would think, and also bring in some of his players, I would bet. If Dave Aranda stays, I think it's pretty much the focus that you just said. Both would have to hit the transfer portal. Both would be probably installing a new offense because it seems like even if Dave Aranda does stay, they're going to have to make a shift somewhere. It's probably going to be on the offensive side. I think in general you're right, but I do think there will be some differences with the new coach and especially on the recruiting side of things.
Yeah, and I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there officially, but I'm still not banking on that being the case, although after Saturday, it does feel like at least the percentage increases a little bit. It just feels like it has to increase. Now, how high that percentage is, I really have no idea. I just think the whole situation sucks. This is the downside to the big business that is college athletics and especially college football, especially this time of year. But regardless of whatever scenario they're under that you lay out there, whether it's year number 5 they're rolling into, or it's a brand new year one for somebody. There's going to be major changes in a lot of what you mentioned. Whoever's hitting the portal hard, that one part is for dadgum sure, and this roster will get a little bit of a shakeup either way as well, whether intentionally or not. A new offense I don't know. Unless you can prove that you can run the football sometime, you're going to have to do something there. You're going to have to pivot in some kind of a way there and change things. Useless Kim degree is in the most objective way possible. Can you please make the arguments for or against a difference maker in the portal choosing Baylor? Like most of us here, I want to see Baylor succeed, but I can't see any avenue where the staff or university has the appeal to bring in legitimate dudes from the portal. When I take my green and gold glasses off, I see a lot of the same looking forward to the offseason and next year.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, Baylor's brought in some pretty good transfers. I mean, Apu was everyone in the country wanted Apu, and they were able to land him. Keytron Jackson, I do think, is a difference maker. I know this year hasn't looked crazy, but he's had chances. I think the biggest thing for me is, you have an opportunity to play on a Power 5 level. That matters to a lot of guys, especially guys who either aren't playing at their current university in the Power 5 or group of 5 guys. Schools all over the country are getting guys that come in and play well for them. I also think there, whether people want to agree with this, there is a culture at Baylor that some kids really like. And, because of that, you're able to land guys who love that culture, love the staff, love what they're building. Playing time is the biggest thing. You're going to get an opportunity to play. If they're going to bring in a transfer, you're most likely playing. So, their argument is the same as most schools, that are hitting the transfer portal. So Baylor won't have that big of an issue landing transfer portal guys who can come in and impact them. The level of transfer portal guys is going to be a little bit different. You're probably only going to be able to land a couple real, high-end, all-conference type guys because of the NIL situation, but that's the same as pretty much every school in the Big 12. So, again, they're not playing at a disadvantage in my eyes when it comes to the Big 12 and NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah, playing time is a powerful weapon, and can be as attractive to some players as anything else, because that's part of why they're in the portal, if not the reason why they're in the portal, is to play. So, that is attractive, even if your team's having struggles, and never underestimate a young person's belief with the right group of people around them to feel like they can be the ones that turn it around, and they're the ones that instill the glory, and all of that. So. I get the negativity there, but they were never really in the running for the blue chip, top transfer guys, like the top 25 list types of guys. Maybe flirting with that, but that was never really in the cards, and that's definitely off the table, as you said. But they can still get a Keytron Jackson or
they
guys along that.
Completely revamped an offensive line through the transfer portal. Right. They completely revamped a defense through the transfer portal. They've done plenty of things that have helped their teams perform at the level they needed to be able to win a Big 12 championship.
Dia Del Ugo, why is responding to Scotty about why is TCU's offense so inconsistent because they haven't played Baylor yet? Yes, very good, Duggo. That's fair. We'll see this weekend how consistent TCU's offense with Kendall Briles in the lead. That's subplot. It almost seems it gets lost though, or else because we just don't even add more fuel to the fire. But that almost gets lost in their own issues. You're not even so worried about the other stuff that otherwise might be a bigger deal. And then Brick Park will close us out here with Keytron Jackson expected back for the TCU game. Does Armani Winfield go back on the shelf? It's clear that Winfield needs more reps if he's to become the player many believed he would be. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's going to be an afterthought now. He might get some reps, but if Keytron's healthy, Keytron needs to be on the field. Keytron's one of their best offensive players, and he's shown that even though it's been inconsistent at times. He's going to be on the field, and Armani's going to be a backup wide receiver again because he does need more time. He's shown some things, but it's clear that he's not quite there yet, I don't think.
Yeah, it's hopefully a process that starts to ramp up a little bit more, though. He is getting a little bit more time here, but, by next year, you'd really hope, all right, now at this point, and that's kind of the case for, this entire team is – this year, you're taking your lumps a little bit. You are younger. Some of that's, explainable. Some of that's not necessarily when you want to hear from, our point of view or the fans' point of view, but it is the reality of, no, you do have to, take your lumps, and that's part of the deal. Jalen Petrie wasn't a future NFL player his freshman and sophomore years, and that's the case for a lot of these guys. So that is part of it, as tough of a pill as that is to swallow, and there's a lot of losing going on. It makes that, something you're not nearly as patient for. But it is part of the deal. However, all these young guys, next year, they need to really see some return on investment from a number of players, and you would think Armani Winfield's definitely a part of that group. And whoever's in control of that, it would appear it's going to be Dave Aranda. But you go get blown out by 40 like you did against Kansas State by TCU, then that's going to make everything a little bit more tough to deal with. And then we'll just see how these next couple of games go. I think that's going to have as much say in anything as anything else. If there is a scale to tip, that will tip it one way or the other.
I think so as well. This weekend's a big one. And Dave Aranda mentioned the Houston game basically specifically because he said we needed to win the one a couple weeks ago, didn't he? Pretty much mentioned it right on point, which was interesting. And so, you can't go out and just get crushed 2 more times. I think if you do, it's pretty clear that your team has probably mailed it in, and then I don't see how you don't make a change. To be honest, I would start to really be saying I don't understand how you couldn't. Right now, I still lean towards they're probably going to keep him based on what I've heard, but it's getting very interesting as the season's coming to an end.
Yep, it is. So we have a lot in store to unpack, even though there will not be a bowl game to do all that with. We're not going to be looking forward to the Armed Forces Bowl. I'm not going to miss out on the memories of last year all that much. I'll be honest with you. That was a whole hell of a day. That was just an adventure. I don't know how else to put it. But that's not a great memory, so I'm not really going to be too bummed about that. But, man, going to bowl games is fun, and that's what you strive for as a program. So that is still a bummer, even if it's probably the best thing for them at this point in time. But it is a catch-22 because all these young guys don't get bowl reps and don't get bowl practices, and that's really what you could stand to use. So, anyways, these next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting. And basketball's starting up now as well, so we got a lot in store, even though the football season's starting to wind down a little bit. Grayson, anything before we head on out here?
Let's do one prediction for Baylor TCU. Let's just get those in before we leave for the day. So actually, also the line for this game has dropped. So I'll get to that in a second. So 2:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus, Baylor travels to TCU to take on the Horned Frogs in Fort Worth. TCU is now a 13-point favorite. The over-under is 58.5. When I looked at this earlier this morning, it was 14, so it's come down a whole point as we're getting closer to game time. Yeah. It would be an upset. I mean, 13 points, that's a big dog. Yeah,
I'm taking TCU in this game, and I think that they've had the number here lately, and that's, if it was a close contest, that's probably what would tip me in their favor, but the fact that I think just in general, the eye test, the talent test, the home field, the way this season has gone, just what we've seen, you add in their dominance in this rivalry, and it's just really hard for me to come up with a scenario where Baylor rolls into Fort Worth and wins this game. There's just not a lot working in their favor, either right currently or lately recent history. So, yeah, I mean, at some point that will end, but there's just not anything right now that leads me to believe that it's going to end, this Saturday out in Fort Worth. So, yeah, I'm taking the Horned Frogs. Not a blowout win. I think it'll be a competitive game, but I do think they win this game.
Do they cover 13?
I don't feel strongly about that. Yeah. I think it could be a close game. I think it could be. I don't think it's going to be like K-State, and if it is, then I think that's when you really get into like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. I'm expecting a closer game, so I'll say no, they don't cover. But I'm not Mr. Vegas by any means, but they'll win by 13 or less.
Okay. Yeah, I think that TCU is going to win this football game. But I do have a sneaky suspicion that Baylor's actually going to play pretty well in this game, and not because they're good, but more so because I think TCU is going to play pretty bad. TCU's coming off of a game that they tried to come back late in against Texas. Seemed like they put a lot of effort into that game, especially in the second half. I think they might have a little bit of a hangover here. I think Baylor might come in and play hard at least and push TCU a little bit. But in general, I think the Horned Frogs just have too much talent. What they do well, airing it out, has exposed Baylor at times this year. When you look at the Texas State game, the Texas game, the Texas Tech game, and then the Houston game even. So I think that Josh Hoover will have some success, but Baylor will keep it close. I think this is going to be like a 4-point game, maybe a 7-point game. So something like 30-23 is kind of what I'm expecting, somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be about where I'm expecting this game to be. So, yeah, anything outside of that, wildly outside of that, then, man, the heat really, really gets turned up. But it already seems pretty hot right now. So I'm expecting a good effort. I think everybody understands the importance here, and we should see a good effort on Saturday. But, all right, anything before we go here?
No, just be sure to check out the premium side of things. Of course, we got recruiting coming up, signing days in a little bit over a month. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be really interesting if Baylor does end up making a coaching change. A lot to cover there. But outside of that, be sure to check out 365 Radio every day from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday.
Yep, we'll be there talking about all the happenings going on. There's going to be a lot, obviously, with Baylor football coming up one way or the other. And just with the portal, with the signing day, all that in store. Basketball season underway. NFL, the Big 12 race, which is still as wild as ever, still with a couple weeks to go. We'll be talking all that 3 to 6, as you mentioned. And we'll be back here next Tuesday at 11:15 on the Baylor Athletics on Sikkim 365 YouTube page. Again, please hit like and subscribe if you will. We talking post-TCU and then ramping up for the final preview of the year. West Virginia, my, how football season has dragged on and yet flown by all at the same time somehow. But thanks to Garrett Ross behind the scenes, thanks to Grayson Grundhoefer, I'm Craig Smoak. Until next time, this has been the BearCast on Sikkim365.com.